I want the record to show that if anyone falls off the stage, like happened one other time when I was at a manufacturing facility in St. Louis, I want to know it's not because I spoke too long, okay? We've been going a while here, and all worthwhile. Sergio, congratulations, man. Sergio reminded me the last time we saw each other, it was in Venice. And it was in Venice, Italy. It's good to see you here, and it's good to see the relationship that Fiat and Chrysler have had, and we, all these workers, all Americans, thank you for your good job. And Bob King, Mr. President, I want to thank you as well. Bob and I have known each other a long time. I've been engaged with the UAW for a long time. Matter of fact, I would not be in this job but for the UAW back in 1972, supporting a 29-year-old kid. And in my state, when I got started, we were a small state. Almost 10% of my entire workforce was UAW, including suppliers. And we had the largest GM plant outside of Detroit, and we had one of the largest Chrysler plants. And my state's been battered. My state has been battered and really hit very badly by the recession and by the unfair competition that's taken place. And not as many guys left and women left, Bob, but thank you for your leadership. And I might add, in days gone by, because I've been around doing this a long time, one of the reasons for the comeback is the relationship between business and labor, is the way they're working together now, and the way in which all of you here are working with Chrysler Fiat. Folks, Mr. Mayor, thank you for the passport to come into the city again. I'm glad to be back. As he said last time, he looked like a linebacker when I was a kid, and we were celebrating another event back then in Toledo and getting back into business and manufacturing. I won't go into that, but it's great to see you again, buddy. I also want to thank Marcy. Marcy has been she's not want to remind you this, but her first campaign I came out and campaigned for her. She was running way ahead. I campaigned for her. She barely won after I left. But since then, she's rectified all that. And Marcy, you have been absolutely indomitable in your support of American workers, and that's not hyperbole. You have. And I say to my friend Sherrod Brown, that Thunderbird would have been all right if they put a bigger engine in it. They should have put a bigger engine in it. Now that's coming from a Corvette guy. They should have put a bigger engine in that vehicle because it would have stayed, it would have worked. And I don't know about the color, Sherrod, but I tell you what, I do what my daughters tell me too. So that's not hard. And Gov, look, this part isn't about politics. This is one of the most stand-up guys I've ever met in my life. This is the guy who doesn't forget where he came from, and he came from a hard-scrapple situation. He remembers it. He doesn't talk about it. Everything he does, everything I've watched him do is all about giving people a fair shake because he's convinced, absolutely convinced, you give an American just a fair shake, just an even break, no advantage, just an even break, and they'll do just fine. They'll do just fine. And Gov, it's a pleasure to be with you. And Lieutenant Governor Fisher, you and I have been friends a long time. Thank you for all the great work that you do. Look, folks, I had a great tour of the production line. Doug was going to tell me who the most important person on the stage was. I asked him who it was. He said he didn't know who the hell it was. He's the second most important. I still haven't figured out who the most important one is. I figure it's got to be Marcy. But all kidding aside, I have spent my entire adult life walking assembly lines, and that's not an exaggeration. I mean that literally. As a matter of fact, if you're unhappy that I'm your vice president, you can blame it on General Motors. 1963, General Motors were running 3 shifts at their Boxwood plant in Delaware. My dad was an automobile man. He said, Joey, you had good paying jobs there. I went and applied for a job on the 3rd shift. Had they hired me, I'd be a proud UAW member, and you'd be in real good luck. I wouldn't be vice president. So blame it on GM. Blame it on GM. But I've spent a lot of time on assembly lines for real. And I've watched the transitions going all the way back to the 60s when I worked for my dad, with my dad. And I've watched it. He was not UAW. He sold the vehicles. I watched how it's changed. And I watched what all of you have gone through. At first, mechanization wasn't something greeted wholeheartedly. It was something that was viewed as costing jobs. But it was needed to begin to compete and to be able to compete with the rest of the world. Well, you've done that, and you now outcompete. On this production line, watching good union workers making great vehicles in an award-winning plant is a good thing to see again. And I'm confident what I always suspected. Ohio may have been, as you all say, the first in flight, but quite frankly, the auto industry has always been the place where this state derives its economic strength and vitality. It's been a major, major piece of this state, like my little state of Delaware. And it's been that way for decades. And I can see today, literally I can see today, it's going to be that way again for decades to come because of all of you. And I thank you for that. Look, I'm the son of an automobile man. My dad, I read about how he owned a vehicle. My dad never owned a dealership. My dad ran the 3 largest dealerships in succession in Delaware for over 35 years. An honorable, gentle, graceful man. And as the joke goes in our household, the son or daughter of an automobile man is the first person to learn in the neighborhood what the word recession means, and the last one to learn what recovery means, because it's always automobiles in first, and usually automobiles out last. The truth of the matter is, we're seeing a little bit of change in that dynamic right now. And I might add, since 1973, there's been a Jeep parked in my driveway to this very day. And folks, if the Secret Service would allow me to drive, which I'm not allowed to do, the President and I, major complaint is we're not allowed to drive anymore. If I was, I'd take that black Wrangler around the corner off the side, if I could. Look, trying not to take too much of your time, but seeing all the great economic activity right here on this line, with suppliers humming next door, I can't help but think of the contrast between the dark things that this economy was showing when we took office in January 2009. Back then, the depth of the recession was becoming clearer and clearer. In the previous 6 months, we'd already lost 3 million jobs before we even got into office. And now you see the economy, instead of contracting at 7%, we were a minus GDP of 6.4% the first quarter we took over at the end of 2008. And for the last 4 quarters, we've been growing. Not as much as we can and should, but we've been growing at an average over 3.5%. And over the first half of last year, we took office, before the legislation that all these folks up here supported to allow this resurgence to take place, before any of that could be done, we had lost another 4 million American jobs. And folks, they're not just statistics. My dad used to have an expression. He said, Joey, a job's about a lot more than a paycheck. It's about dignity. It's about respect. It's about your place in the community. And over 8.5 million people in this Great Recession have not only had their jobs taken away from them, but their dignity stripped from them. Through no fault of their own. Through no fault of their own. You know, we talk about these statistics like they're numbers. The governor's heard me say this before. The longest walk a man or woman can make is up a short flight of stairs to their child's bedroom to say, honey, I'm sorry, but we got to move. You can't go to the same school next year. You can't be in the same Little League team. Daddy or mommy lost their job, or the bank's coming to take the house. Too many Buckeyes have made that walk up that short flight of stairs, and they're hurting. They're hurting badly. And so, all these jobs we talk about as if they're mere statistics are human lives, families that are being caught and squeezed, losing their ability to provide for themselves, and in the process, losing their dignity. Against this backdrop, the President and I were sworn in. Our goal was to do everything we could as fast as we could to keep this great recession from morphing into a depression, literally into a depression. We knew we had to act, and we did with the help of the folks standing behind me. We stabilized the financial system, an unpopular thing to do, but necessary. We stabilized the housing market. We passed historic legislation to help families hit the hardest by the recession pull themselves back up and make investments in industries of the future, like we've done here in Toledo. Like we've done here in Toledo with new technologies for solar energy and new technologies that are going to be the technologies of the future. This also used to be the glass capital of the world. There's no reason why it can't be again. But there's a sense in the last administration that somehow we had to move over. We had to move over and make room for China. We had to move over and make room for other nations because somehow we couldn't compete in the same industries at the same level. Well, Barack and I reject that notion. We know a rising tide rises all boats. I'd like China to succeed. I want all the rest of the country to succeed. But the idea that we have to accommodate ourselves to be number two in anything is something we refuse to do. So, folks, with the help of Sherrod Brown in the United States Senate and your Congresswoman, we went and fixed a broken healthcare system. We drove up the quality of the healthcare system and drove down the the cost to middle-class families everywhere. And of course, we helped stabilize and revitalize the auto industry. And today, we're seeing the fruits of that important investment. Look, we heard loud and clear from our opponents. Remember these phrases? The market will sort it out. Translated, middle-class people's body will litter the roadside. The industry needs to die to be reborn, not realizing that tens of thousands of jobs would die with it. Ladies and gentlemen, these people didn't have the same faith we did in the resilience of the American people, the American auto worker, and in American business. I wish those who wanted us to walk away from all this, from this industry, could see what I've seen here today and stand before all of you. I see an incredibly productive assembly plant that is a leader in the supply chain management integration of all the industries in the country. I see a facility that has twice received the Harbor Award as the most efficient assembly plant in North America. I see what the reports show, that it takes only, as Marcy said, 13.5 hours to build a Jeep Wagoneer in Toledo, which is an hour and a half faster than built of any other competitor in North America. How do you do it? Now, I know all of you know how you do it. You do it every day. But a lot of folks who may pick up, this may be carried on the news, a lot of folks out there don't understand how it's done. There's a lot of folks who don't understand how the plant works. So let me explain. There's a very compelling story here on this line about the relationship you've developed between the end-of-line assembly plant and your three key suppliers on this same property. There are nearly 3,000 jobs, American jobs, on the supply side of this, not in this building, on the supply side, making the parts directly put in the vehicles that come in a conveyor belt into this plant. That's not even counting the jobs of those suppliers who make the tires, the manufacturing plants out there, the steel mills, the glass makers, the plastic molding companies, the stamping plants that fabricate the parts, the truck drivers who transfer all of this. There are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of jobs associated with that automobile, other than all of you standing here who assemble it in 13.5 hours. I'm told no other plant in North America has as tightly integrated a relationship where the assembly lines in all 4 of the facilities on this site are physically connected, and the suppliers have a responsibility for parts of the manufacturing process that historically and traditionally were based on the assembly line. Here at this facility, 3 of your key suppliers have a direct and uninterrupted flow from their assembly lines into yours. The exit of one supplier is the entry to the next. Only one other auto plant in the world is integrated this way. Sergio, you've done one heck of a job. And by being so mindful of the importance of your supplier base, you've achieved amazing efficiencies here, and you're building a great product. When the President and I committed this administration to save the auto industry, we knew that stabilizing the supplier base would be key. And in fact, even before, as Marcy would tell you, even before the investments were made in GM and Chrysler, we launched and applied what we called an auto suppliers program, support program of $5 billion. An initiative to give the suppliers the confidence to continue to ship parts, paying their employees, not laying them off, operating while the fate of the auto companies were still unknown. We had to keep them alive. And as car companies gained enough strength and capital markets began to come back, we were able to terminate that program in early April, sooner than we thought, with companies repaying all of the loans in full, including fees and interest from that $5 billion. The American taxpayer actually made some money. That's right. The American taxpayer has paid back in full and made interest on their investment. But look at what it really means. Put together all the auto supply industries, all that they constitute, and they constitute one of the largest manufacturing subsectors in our economy. The direct suppliers employ 435 workers, including 51,000 suppliers, workers, here in Ohio. Auto suppliers directly employ more than 3 times the number of workers on this assembly line, and assembly plants all over America to support the production of a classic American vehicle like the Jeep Wrangler. It's a story that gets lost. People focus putting all of the parts together, but they don't think of all that goes into getting those parts to the assembly line. That's what happens here. The links to the supplier chain are getting stronger and stronger every day. And most recent data shows that suppliers' employment grew 10% over last year, the best showing in over a decade. Chrysler's records show that at peak of the crisis last year, more than 1/3 of their parts suppliers were suffering financial distress. 13% were in danger of collapsing. Today, that third has shrunk to 1/5, and almost none of the parts suppliers remain in a high-risk status. 0.1% is all that remain in jeopardy. And the effects are reverberating throughout the industry. In the year before we took office, the auto industry shed 431,300 good-paying middle-class jobs. But in the years since GM and Chrysler emerged from bankruptcy because of the loans and reorganization, the auto industry employment has increased 76,300. Our first year, 76,300. Their last year were 430,000 lost. It's a huge reversal, and one we'd never have seen had we listened to those who told us to walk away. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to read from you one thing. It'll be short. There's a famous magazine called The Economist, one of the most respected magazines in the world, a very, very conservative, economically conservative magazine. It's sort of the Bible of the free market. That's my characterization. Let me read the headline from August the 19th. I wish every press person were this candid. It says, General Motors, headline, Government Motors No More. Subheadline, an apology is due to Barack Obama. His takeover of GM could have gone horribly wrong, but it has not. Then, 3 lines from the document. Many people thought that the bailout and the smaller one involving Chrysler was unwise. Governments have historically been lousy stewards of industry. Lovers of free markets, including this paper, this magazine, The Economist, feared that Obama might use GM as a political tool. Yet the doomsdayers is wrong, I'm quoting. Yet the doomsdayers were wrong. GM is now profitable again, and Chrysler, managed by Fiat, is making progress. Taxpayers may even turn out to make a profit when the government stock in GM is sold in the so-called IPO. Given the panic that gripped the private purse strings last year, it is unlikely that GM would have been anything other than liquidated, sending a cascade of destruction through the supply chain on which its rivals, including Ford, also depended. And the last sentence I'll read. It says, the lesson for American voters is that their president, a gambler, yes, an interventionist, yes, a socialist, no. The free enterprise system, and private capital is the reason why this is coming back, but without a down payment by the American taxpayers, there would have been hundreds and hundreds of thousands of jobs lost, and this economy would be even further in the tank. And those 76,300 new jobs, close to 40 of them coming from suppliers, wouldn't be around. In total, the big three will have added as many of 11,000 new, decent-paying jobs before this year ends it. What a turnaround in where we've been. Folks, one reason this expansion is particularly important and promising is because of what we call insourcing. You've heard for the last 2 decades, particularly from Morrissey, nothing but about outsourcing. We've outsourced everything. Well, because of the change that's taken place, we're beginning to insource, a fancy term for bringing parts productions back home to the United States from abroad. Now look, I can think of no better example than our own Jeep Wrangler. Last year, fewer than 60% of the parts in that vehicle were domestic parts. This year, 78% are domestic parts. That means American jobs. Look, that's a huge shift to production here in the United States and precisely what's needed to rebuild American manufacturing. Ford and the UAW are working right now together, as the president of UAW can tell you. They're working right now to develop a new plan for sourcing components, including parts, subassemblies, and systems, to companies in the United States from abroad. Folks, it's just good business. Some of these jobs would not have been produced by suppliers outside the United States. But Ford committed to insource jobs to a majority of its assembly, powertrain, and stamping facilities around the country, including, by the way, in Sharonville, the transmission plant here in Ohio. Ford's on pace to bring in-house approximately 2,000 hourly jobs that would have been performed by suppliers outside the country by the year 2012. Look, it's a long, tough road. The U.S. auto industry has returned to profitability from competitiveness. And I might add, I think it would have made my father's heart sing were he alive. 3 months ago, Consumer Reports was the first time in 17 years American consumers said they thought American-made automobiles were better made than foreign-made automobiles. In March, all 3 automakers posted operating profits. This is the first time that's happened since 2004. We also are about to see the first IPO, that's this selling of their stock, of an American car company since 1956. GM has filed the papers to start a process of an IPO that could happen this year. Press asked me appropriately, do I think they'd be able to pay back all the stock? We own 60%. The American people own 60% of GM stock. Are they going to be able to sell it all and all of the profit? I don't know what the number will be, but it's a big number. It's a big number. It's a gigantic transition. As Barack said, he and I did not run for president and vice president to be chairman and vice chairman of the General Motors Corporation. It's about to take place. Obviously, all the industry's problems aren't solved, but I can say with confidence that not only is this industry going to survive, it's going to thrive, ladies and gentlemen. And let me tell you why I believe that. Our actions, as I've stressed, the Recovery Act, the investment in GM and Chrysler, the supplier support program, they played an important role in the turnaround. That's true. But let's face it, all Barack and I did, in fact, all we ever intended to do was clear away the brush left by 8 years of neglect and underinvestment and terrible negligent oversight on the part of the last administration. Clear away the brush to let American entrepreneurs, American businessmen, and American workers go back at what they do best, making things and making a profit. The rest was, and continues to be, up to you and up to American business. It's up to the innovative designers of plants like this, whose inset found new efficiencies by integrating the supplier base. It's up to the investors and the employees and the unions who got together and made necessary sacrifices. You made sacrifices and compromises so that these companies could reemerge from bankruptcy stronger, leaner, and more efficient than they were a decade ago and 2 and 3 decades ago. It's up to the leadership of people like Governor Strickland, who's made such a relentless effort to force bringing back new jobs and providing where the state can be engaged, the down payment for some of these things. And most of all, it's up to the folks working in the line here and next door and the suppliers and throughout the states of this nation, making and assembling parts of a great American automobile. I want to thank you for your commitment to once again lead the world in auto production. And I promise you that the President and I are going to do everything we can to create the conditions to allow this industry to grow and flourish. Because when we do, other industries at home grow and flourish. As I've said many times, I apologize to the governor because we've been together a lot. I say it time and again, I don't know where it's written. I don't know where it's written that it says America will be number 2 or 3 or 4 in automobile production in the 21st century. I don't know where it's written that America can't and will not lead the world again as the greatest automobile manufacturer in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that's what's going to happen. I genuinely believe it. I know the press likes to call me an optimist. I'm an optimist because I understand the journey of the history of this great nation. There is not a thing we cannot do. Not a thing we cannot do. So folks, don't believe those who tell you this is temporary or this can't be the same kind of march we had starting at the beginning of the last century. I believe it will be. The President believes it will be. The reason our administration took the risk to save the automobile industry in America is that we started off with a basic instinct. We trust the innovative instincts of American business. We have faith in the quality of American workers. We believe in the grit of the American people. I love these guys who tell me that we're anti-business. Every good president, every great president in history, including Republican presidents, have understood that there are times when the government has to step in and provide seed money. Abraham Lincoln did in the middle of the Civil War by providing $16,000 in bonds for every mile of railroad that was built across the northern part of the United States through the Transcontinental Railroad. Dwight D. Eisenhower did it after Sputnik by putting money into a thing called ARPA, which became DARPA, which created the internet, which 1.7 billion people in the world use and would not have existed without the government investment and research. It's private industry, an initiative that's going to do this. It's our capitalist system will do it. But you got to take away all the impediments. And you got to give just people an even fighting chance. The American auto industry is rebuilding itself. And I believe it will dominate in the 21st century like it did in the 20th. Together, we're going to make sure that America once again leads the world economically. And I want to thank you. I want to thank you all for the tough times you had to go through just to survive to this point. And I want to thank you for having faith in one another and having faith in our ability to actually produce again. May God bless you all. May God bless America, and most of all, may God protect our troops. Thank you very, very much.
Hi, I'm Austin Goolsbee from the Council of Economic Advisors. And today I wanted to talk a little bit about a major milestone hit by General Motors. For some of you, the last you heard about General Motors, they were supposed to have been on their last legs and about to die. But that's not quite how it worked out. The story really goes back more than 10 years. GM had become a manufacturing dinosaur that wasn't competitive internationally. They were bloated with debt. They had higher costs than other manufacturers. They were making models plagued with quality problems that people weren't willing to buy. And what I've plotted here is the market value of General Motors going from 1999 up through the past several years. And what you see is that it was trending downward. They were losing market share. They were losing customers, and they were definitely losing money. In the 4 years up to their bankruptcy, General Motors lost more than $80 billion. They lost more than $30 billion just in the year 2008. And so when the deep recession hit, they were really on their last breath. So the president comes into office in January of 2009. The economy's in free fall. General Motors is about to collapse. And the president has a series of very tough decisions that he has to make. The president decides, over the voices of many of the critics, not to just let them liquidate in an uncontrolled manner, but instead to make a $49 billion investment in the company and to force them to restructure to make themselves competitive. Now, critics said that they couldn't do it. They were going to die anyway, and we'd never get a dime out of that. But we learned from Ford and from others that big American manufacturing companies, when they make themselves competitive, they can be successful. And so the president launched them on a massive restructuring effort. And that involved very tough conditions: firing the CEO, replacing a third of the management. It had to be a shared sacrifice. Workers had to sacrifice, dealers, suppliers, management, everybody. It was the only way to make that company competitive so that they could grow out of their problems. But they did it, and it did work. They got their costs down. People around the country started buying their cars again. And for the first time in years, General Motors actually turned a profit. And now General Motors begins selling shares again to the public. They had an initial public offering that was one of the biggest in history. The value of the company is now more than $50 billion, and investors gave them a major vote of confidence. And that vote of confidence means we can now start getting out of the business of owning the shares of General Motors and paying back the American taxpayer. But in truth, it was never really about the stock market. It was about saving American jobs. And if you ask, what did it mean for jobs? You first have to remember that the alternative was the liquidation of General Motors. Rather than hundreds of thousands of people around the country going out looking for new work, they've gone back to work at GM plants, at dealerships, at auto suppliers all around the nation. And in a number of cases, there have actually been plant expansions where they've added shifts and extra work. So if you take Lordstown, Ohio, in eastern Ohio, outside of Youngstown, they introduce a higher mileage vehicle, the Chevy Cruze. It's being made right there. There are more than 4,000 people with jobs. They're operating 3 shifts to make those cars. Or if you take the Hamtramck Detroit plant, they're making the Chevy Volt there. It's a new electric vehicle. Just got named Motor Trend Car of the Year. Overall, for the first time in a decade, the U.S. auto industry's employment is actually expanding. The critics said this would never work, but the critics were wrong. Rather than a collapsing auto industry dealing another crushing blow on the American economy, the American automotive sector is now one of our engines of growth.
Hello, folks. How are you? Good to see you all. Good to be back in an automobile plant making things. Hey, thank you all very much. We're delighted to be here, and I suspect as delighted as you are to be able to be here. Look, when the president and I got elected, we knew we had a heavy load to carry. The country is in some real tough shape, and we stepped up, and with the help of all the congressmen and senators here, we passed the Recovery Act just after taking office in the midst of the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. And we had three clear goals led by the president. One is help communities and people who are hit the hardest by this awful recession. Save and create jobs today, but also lay a foundation for long-term prosperity in the future. Because more than a year after implementing this act, I can say proudly that not only have we helped millions of people, but not only have we created millions of jobs, not only have we spurred growth in new industries, but we have completely transformed, with the great leadership of the local and state leadership here, communities like this one here in Kokomo. Look, I'm the son of an automobile man, and I want to tell you, he managed automobile facilities for my entire life. And Kokomo, anybody in the automobile business has already known, was one of the great auto towns in America. Not only making Chrysler automobiles, but Delphi supplying parts and so many other suppliers and all the related jobs that go with that. To bring Kokomo back, to bring the automobile industry back, we knew we had to change things. We couldn't just keep doing the things the way we did. We knew the auto industry had to get leaner, had to get tougher, had to be more competitive. And we insisted that they did. And now you see the result. An old industry adapting to a whole new era, competing again, leading again, and most importantly, hiring again. Hiring again. Mr. President, I know you know this, but the last outfit we succeeded, they lost 461,000 automobile-related jobs. And so far, we've created almost 75,000 new jobs, and a lot more to come. And folks, look, the government didn't do this. The government didn't do this alone. The government did what it's supposed to do. With the leadership of a president and leadership from the president, we had investment from the private sector brought on board because the government was able to get back in the game and said we're part of it. The auto industry has roared back in America. And I was telling the boss over here that the thing I like most about everything, again, being the son of an automobile man, is that my dad would be happy. For the first time in 24 years, J.D. Power said Americans like your product better than like foreign products being made here in terms of quality. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. Look around here. Look around here. For every one guy on the work here in the assembly line, there's 5 more doing exactly what you're doing. Everybody thinks it's only the assembly plants. Well, there's 5 people working in plants like this for every single job in the automobile assembly line. It's a big, big process. People working in places like here in Delphi, suppliers making parts, they're the major part of this recovery. And then, you know, when you guys have jobs, guess what happens? The coffee shop stays open, the barber shop stays open, the restaurant stays open. People open new businesses downtown. People sell jackets and shoes and hats. People, in fact, have jobs. This has an effect all the way through the economy. And that's what's happening here in Kokomo, as your mayor can tell you. You know, the lunch counter needs a few more waitresses and servers to feed them. The remodeled plant can reinvigorate an entire community and give people who don't work here hope. The people who don't work here, we were just in town. People were saying, thank you. They don't work here. They're saying, thank you for this facility. But we can't just build a new economy by revitalizing and modernizing an old industry. We can't stop at creating new jobs in old industries. We need to create whole new industries as well. And that's what the president did. A great example is over in Tipton, the Abound Solar. Whole new industry. There's no reason why you can't build the best automobiles in the world and also be a leader in what the new industries, the new green industries in the world are going to be. The president did what every great president has done in the past. He's looked to the future. We used the Recovery Act to provide seed money that sparked private investment. Private investment in new industries like solar and wind, advanced batteries, high-efficiency lighting, high-speed rail. Folks, some of our friends forget that's what all great presidents did. Lincoln did it when he built the Transcontinental Railroad by putting down seed money to the railroads to go build it. We're doing the same thing here again. Every great president has a vision, and now we're doing it here. We're doing it here with the renewable energy investments that are being made outside the city, with the new industries of the future. And in a sense, there's a whole new automobile industry, building a different kind of automobile. Mr. President, my dad used to have a saying when he ran automobile dealerships for almost 4 decades. He said, Joey, all they got to do is give me product. Give me product. Give me product, I can sell it. So you're giving them the best product in the world again. We also believe we can't have a strong economy without strong communities. And that's why the President in the Recovery Act made sure we helped hard-hit towns like Kokomo. We just at the fire station. There's 13 firefighters that are still on the job because of the Recovery Act and because of the SAFER Act. Teachers, law enforcement officers on the job. When I tell you an international recession hits and a worldwide recession, guess what? A town like Kokomo and other towns of 50,000 all across America, they can't do it on their own. You got to help them stand up a little bit. And that's why we help with infrastructure and roads, to bring improvements, to bring back Main Street, to bring it back to life. Kokomo is in the forefront of it all. And nowhere is it written that Kokomo can't be the hub of innovation in emerging industries of the 21st century like it was in the 20th century. Nowhere is that written. Look, nobody knows better than this man that our work certainly isn't done yet. We're just starting. But it's important we recognize success stories like Kokomo as signs that we are definitely moving in the right direction. This town and its people are a model for others looking to do the same thing over and over again in this country. You guys here have been the embodiment of the limitless potential when we put government and the private sector and the community all together, working toward the same end. A community built, this community is built on grit and determination, a willingness for you all to fight hard, to pick yourself back up off the mat, and to march toward what you all believe now, I hope you do, is a better day, a brighter future, a new start. We know it's a long road back, but we know we're on the road. And the one most important thing we got to communicate to the nation and to everyone listening is we can't stop now. We can't turn around. We're heading in the right direction. Kokomo's coming back, America's coming back, and it couldn't have happened without the vision of the man sitting behind me. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, Barack Obama.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mary. Everybody have a seat. Thank you so much. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Kokomo. I have to just say, by the way, Joe's not only one of the best vice presidents in history, he's also one of the best introducers in history. I try to take him wherever I can. I want to thank your plant manager, Jeremy Keating, for the great tour and the great work that he's doing here. He is proud of the work that's being done at this plant. I want to thank your local UAW president, Richie Boroff, who's here. Thank them for showing me around. A couple other hot shots. U.S. Senator Evan Bayh is here. Congressman Joe Donnelly is in the house. Congressman Andre Carson is here. Congressman Barron Hill is here. By the way, Congressman Barron Hill is in the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame. Now that's pretty cool. being a congressman's cool. Being in the Basketball Hall of Fame in Indiana, that's something. Mayor of Kokomo, Greg Goodnight, is here, doing outstanding work. The CEO of Chrysler Group, Sergio Marchionne, is here. President of UAW, Bob King, is in the house. And we got some of the best workers in the United States of America right here at this plant. You know, I had a chance to meet some of you as we were going around seeing these amazing transmissions that you're building, and I was very happy to hear that after a couple of tough years, this plant is now running at full capacity. And that's why I'm here today. That's why I'm here today. Now, we all know that one plant by itself doesn't mean that there aren't people in Kokomo who are still hurting. I had lunch with the mayor and some firefighters, and there's still a long way to go. The mayor's got all kinds of great plans, and there are businesses that are looking to start expanding. But the fact is, you know, there are millions of people around the country who are still looking for work in the wake of the worst recession in our lifetimes. I don't have to tell you that. Many of you still have friends or neighbors, a husband or a wife who is still struggling. And I know that before this plant started rehiring, a lot of you were in the same position. So you remember that it is a tough, tough thing when you're out of work, especially when you've taken a lifetime of pride in working and supporting a family and making great products. But even as we continue to face serious challenges, what's happening here at this plant, the changes we're seeing throughout Kokomo, are signs of hope and confidence in the future, in our future, together. You're showing us the way forward. You're living up to that spirit of optimism and determination, that grit that's always been at the heart of who we are as a people, at the heart of America. I remember coming to Kokomo a little over 2 years ago. Joe will remember this. Some of you might have been here. What was happening here reflected what was happening all over the country, all over this region. For a decade or more, families had felt a growing sense of economic insecurity. A lot of manufacturing had left the area. And then a recession started taking hold. And folks were seeing job losses and facing new hardships. That was before anybody knew how devastating the recession was going to be. So by the time I took office, just a few months later, the financial crisis had hit, the auto industry teetered on the brink, and we were losing millions of jobs. And that left Joe and I with some tough choices. One was to help the auto industry restructure. And that wasn't an easy call. You know, I understood that there were some reservations of those who said that the industry should pay a price for some poor decisions by the part of management. But we also knew that millions of jobs hung in the balance. We also knew that the very survival of places like Kokomo were on the line. And we knew that the collapse of the American auto industry would lead to an even deeper disaster for our economy. And you know what? We also believed that America, which popularized the automobile, whose middle class was made on the basis of manufacturing, that we couldn't just give up. We couldn't throw in the towel. That was not an option. There were those who were prepared to give up on Kokomo and our auto industry. There were those who said it was going to be too difficult, or that it was bad politics, or it was throwing good money after bad. You remember the voices arguing for us to do nothing. They were pretty loud, suggesting we should just step back and watch an entire sector of our economy fall apart. But we knew that the auto industry was not built, and this country was not built by doing the easy thing. It wasn't built by doing nothing. It was built by doing what was necessary, even when it's difficult. So we made the decision to stand behind the auto industry. If automakers, if CEOs like Sergio were willing to do what was necessary to make themselves competitive in the 21st century, and if they had the cooperation of workers who were taking pride in the products that they made. We made the decision to stand with you because we had confidence in the American worker, more than anything. And today we know that was the right decision. We know that was the right decision. Today, each of the big three automakers has increased their market share. Each of them. For the first time in over a decade, Americans are buying a larger share of Chryslers, Fords, and GM cars and a smaller share of their foreign counterparts. For the first time in decades. We're coming back. We're on the move. All three American companies are profitable and they are growing. Some of you read last week, GM's stock offering exceeded expectations as investors expressed their confidence in a future that seemed so dim just 18 months ago. And as a result, the Treasury was able to sell half of its GM stock. So here's the lesson. Don't bet against America. Don't bet against the American auto industry. Don't bet against American ingenuity. Don't bet against the American worker. Don't bet against us. Don't bet against us. Don't bet against us. This plant is a shining example of why you shouldn't. Now, 2 years ago, production here was plummeting. A lot of folks had lost their jobs. Today, this plant is coming back. The company has invested more than $300 million in this factory to retool. But it gets better. Sergio just told me today, Chrysler is announcing an additional investment of more than $800 million in its Kokomo facility. $800 million. That's good. That's good news. That's real money, $800 million. Say the mayor's got a big grin on his face. You're pretty happy about that. Over the next few years, folks here expect to manufacture more transmissions than ever before. And as a result, hundreds of workers are back on the job. And Jeremy said we're going to be hiring more. This includes I'm going to name a couple people just to embarrass them a little bit. Where's Sharon Ibarra? Sharon here? Right here. Sharon lost her job of 20 years at a paper mill. She was only able to find work that paid her far less than her old job until she was hired by Chrysler. And now she is doing a great job right here at Chrysler. We're proud of you. Jim Farod is here. Where's Jim? Jim's right next to her. Jim worked for Chrysler for a decade, right? Then he lost his job when the plant he worked at in Newcastle shut down. And over the next few years, He could only find intermittent work on and off. It wasn't until after the restructuring that he was able to have a job he could count on. He is back at work now for more than a year doing outstanding jobs, making great products here at Chrysler. So. At a plant down the road, workers are manufacturing parts for hybrid vehicles. That's already led to dozens of jobs and will lead to nearly 200 jobs over the next few years. A few miles outside of Kokomo, in Tipton, a clean energy company called Abound is going to be able to hire 900 workers, taking over a plant that had to shut down a few years ago. So a factory that was empty and dark will come back to life. And when people have a paycheck, as Joe said, they can go to the store, they're able to spend. That helps the economy grow. And so on Main Street in Kokomo, we're seeing a revival with new businesses opening downtown. So for anybody who says our country's best days are behind us, anybody who would doubt our prospects for the future, anybody who doesn't believe in the Midwest, anybody who doesn't believe in manufacturing, have them come to Kokomo. Have them come to Kokomo. Come here, meet these workers, visit these plants, come back to this city that's fighting block by block, business by business, job by job. This is a reminder of what we do as Americans, what we can do as Americans when we come together. We're not divided. We're not spending all our time bickering, but instead focusing on getting the job done. We don't give up. We don't turn back. We fight for our future. And no, we're not out of the woods yet. It took a lot of years to get us into this mess. It'll take longer than anybody would like to get us out. But I want everybody to be absolutely clear. We are moving in the right direction. We learned today that the economy is growing at a faster pace than we previously thought. That's welcome news, but we're going to keep on making it grow faster. We're going to keep on creating more jobs. We need to do everything we can to make that happen. That's why in the coming days, it is so important. In the coming months, it's so important. The Democrats and Republicans work together to speed up our recovery. We've got to put aside our differences. The election's over. We've got to find places where we can agree. We've got to remember the most important contest we face, it's not between Democrats and Republicans. It's between America and our economic competitors. Other nations are already making investments. Other nations are making investments in education, energy, and infrastructure, and technology, because they know that's how they're going to be able to attract the new jobs of the future. And throughout our history, Democrats and Republicans have agreed on making these investments. If we don't want to cede our economic leadership to nations like China, we've got to do the same today. We've got to make sure our workers have the skills and the training to compete with any workers in the world. We should give our businesses more incentive to invest in research and innovation that leads to new jobs and new products and new industries like the ones we're seeing here in Kokomo. We should make it easier, not harder, for middle-class families to get ahead. I'll give you an example on taxes. Next year, taxes are set to go up for middle-class families unless Congress acts. If we don't act by the end of the year, a typical middle-class family will wake up on January 1st to a tax increase of $3,000 per year. So in the next few weeks, I'm asking Congress to take up this issue. The last thing we can afford to do right now is raise taxes on middle-class families. If we allow these taxes to go up, the result would be that a lot of people most likely would spend less, and that means that the economy would grow less. So we ought to resolve this issue in the next couple of weeks. So you've got the assurance that your taxes won't go up when the clock strikes midnight. Now, this is actually an area where Democrats and Republicans agree. The only place where we disagree is whether we can afford to also borrow $700 billion to pay for an extra tax cut for the wealthiest Americans, for millionaires and billionaires. I don't think we can afford it right now, not when we are going to have to make some tough decisions to rein in our deficits. That's going to require sacrifice from all Americans, including those who can most afford it. So I'm eager to sit down with leaders from both parties next week and to hammer this out, but we need to hammer it out. Long before transmissions were coming off the line at this plant, and by the way, you look at these transmissions today, and somebody 20 years ago or 10 years ago might not recognize them. They're amazing. Before Henry Ford built the Model T, or Walter Chrysler took up the reins at a startup called Buick, a man by the name of Elwood Haynes decided to do a little experiment right here in Kokomo. Right? He set up a 1-horsepower boat engine on his kitchen. He bolted it to the ground. His idea was that he might be able to rig the motor to a carriage. So he starts it up, and the engine worked great. In fact, it worked so well that it came loose from the bolts and destroyed the kitchen floor. And after a brief and what I imagine was a difficult conversation with his wife, Elwood decided to continue his tests in his machine shop, and he toiled for months. But when he was finished, he had completed one of the earliest working automobiles ever built in America, and he named it the Pioneer. So Kokomo has a storied place in our history. This is a city where people came to invent things and to build things, to make things here in America, to work hard in the hopes of producing something of value and something that people could be proud of. That's the legacy of all of you. You are all heirs to that tradition right here at this plant. That's the legacy that has made this country the envy of the world. And I'm absolutely convinced this legacy is one you will continue to uphold for years and decades to come. Congratulations, Chrysler. Congratulations, Kokomo. Proud of you. It is good to be back in Toledo. It is good to be with all of you. Now, for those of you who I've met up close, I just want you to know that I stopped by Rudy's, had 2 hot dogs, 2 chili dogs with onions. So I've been looking for a mint backstage. It tasted pretty good going down, though. It is wonderful to see you. We've got some outstanding public servants who are here who've been working hard on behalf of working Americans their entire careers. One of the finest senators that I know of, Senator Sherrod Brown, is in the House. Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur's in the House. Your mayor is in the House. Give him a big round of applause. I just took a short tour of the plant and watched some of you putting the finishing touches on the Wrangler. Now, as somebody reminded, I need to call it the iconic Wrangler. And that's appropriate, because when you think about what Wrangler has always symbolized freedom, adventure, hitting the open road, never looking back, which is why Malia and Sasha will never buy one. Until maybe they're 35. I don't want any adventure for them. I want to thank Jill for the kind introduction. Somebody on my staff asked Jill to describe herself in 3 words or less, and she said, hardworking. Hardworking. And her entire family agreed. So she's with the right team here at this plant because I know there are a lot of hardworking people here. And I am I'm proud of all of you. Jill was born and raised right here in Toledo. Her mother retired from this plant. Her stepfather retired from this plant. Her uncle still works at this plant. She met her husband at this plant. Now they have 2 children of their own, and her 3-year-old wants to work at this plant. I don't think her story is unique. I'm sure there are a lot of you who have similar stories of previous generations working for Chrysler. In this plant, or the earlier plant that used to, that I guess is still right down the road, this is the economic rock of the community. You depend on it, and so do thousands of Americans. The Wrangler you build here directly supports 3,000 other jobs with parts manufactured all across America. Doors from Michigan, axles from Kentucky, tires from Tennessee, and this plant indirectly supports hundreds of other jobs right here in Toledo. After all, without you, who'd eat at Chet's, or Hinky's, or Rudy's, or who'd buy all those cold ones at Zinger's? This guy right here. That's the Zinger crew right there. All right. What would be life like here in Toledo if you didn't make these cars? You know, 2 years ago, we came pretty close to finding out. We were still near the bottom of a vicious recession, the worst that we've seen in our lifetimes. And ultimately, that recession cost 8 million jobs. And it hit this industry particularly hard. So in the year before I took office, this industry lost more than 400,000 jobs. In the span of a few months, 1 in 5 American auto workers got a pink slip. And 2 great American companies, Chrysler and GM, stood on the brink of liquidation. Now, we had a few options. We could have followed the status quo and kept the automakers on life support by just giving them tens of billions of dollars of taxpayer money, but never really dealing with the structural issues at these plants. But that would have just kicked the problem down the road. Or we could have done what a lot of folks in Washington thought we should do, and that is nothing. We could have just let U.S. automakers go into an uncontrolled free fall. And that would have triggered a cascade of damage all across the country. If we let Chrysler and GM fail, plants like this would have shut down, then dealers and suppliers across the country would have shriveled up, then Ford and other automakers could have failed too, because they wouldn't have had the suppliers that they needed. And by the time the dominoes stopped falling, more than 1 million jobs and countless communities and a proud industry that helped build America's middle class for generations wouldn't have been around anymore. So in the middle of a deep recession, that would have been a brutal and irreversible shock to the entire economy and to the future of millions of Americans. So we refused to let that happen. I didn't run for president to get into the auto business. I've got more than enough to do. I ran for president because too many Americans felt their dreams slipping away from them. That core idea of America, that if you work hard, if you do right, if you're responsible, that you can lead a better life and most importantly pass on a better life to your kids, that American dream felt like it was getting further and further out of reach. Folks were working harder for less. Wages were flat while the cost of everything from health care to groceries kept on going up. And as if things weren't hard enough, the bottom fell out of the economy in the closing weeks of that campaign back in 2008. So life got that much harder. So I want everybody to understand, our task hasn't just been to recover from the recession. Our task has been to rebuild the future on a stronger foundation than we had before, to make sure that you can see your incomes and your savings rise again, and you can retire with security and respect again, and you can open doors of opportunity for your kids again, and we can live out the American dream again. That's what we're fighting for. That's what we're fighting for. So that's what drives me every day as I step into the Oval Office. That's why we stood by the American auto industry. It was about you, your families, your jobs, your lives, your dreams. Making sure that we were doing everything possible to keep them within reach. So we decided to do more than just rescue the industry from crisis. We decided to retool it for a new age. We said that if everyone involved was willing to take the tough steps and make the painful sacrifices that were needed to become competitive, then we'd invest in your future, in the future of communities like Toledo, that we'd have your back. So I placed my bet on you. I put my faith in the American worker. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to do that every day of the week, because what you've done vindicates my faith. Today, all three automakers are turning a profit. That hasn't happened since 2004. Today, all three American automakers are gaining market share. That hasn't happened since 1995. And today, I'm proud to announce the government has been completely repaid for the investments we made under my watch by Chrysler because of the outstanding work that you guys did. Because of you. Right. Chrysler has repaid every dime and more of what it owes the American taxpayer from the investment we made during my watch. And by the way, you guys repaid it 6 years ahead of schedule. And last night, we reached an agreement to sell the government's remaining interest in the company, so soon Chrysler will be 100% in private hands. Early. Faster than anybody believed. So I couldn't be prouder of what you've done. And what's most important, all three American automakers are now adding shifts and creating jobs at the strongest rate since the 1990s. So far, the auto industry's added 113,000 jobs over the past 2 years. In Detroit, Chrysler added a second shift at its Jefferson North plant. GM's adding a third shift at its Hamtramck plant for the first time ever. In Indiana, Chrysler's investing more than $1.3 billion in its Kokomo facilities. And across the country, GM plans to hire back every single one of its laid-off workers by the end of the year. Every single one. And that makes a difference for everyone who depends on this industry. See, companies like a small precision tooling manufacturer in Vandergrift, Pennsylvania, have brought back many of the employees that they had laid off 2 years ago. Manufacturers from Michigan to Massachusetts are looking for new engineers to build advanced batteries for American-made electric cars. And obviously, Chet and Inke's and Zingers, they'll all have your business for some time to come, especially those guys over there. So this industry is back on its feet, repaying its debts, gaining ground. Because of you, we can once again say that the best cars in the world are built right here in the US of A, right here in Ohio, right here in the Midwest. And each day when you clock in, you're doing more than earning your pay by churning out cars. You're standing up for this company. You're sticking up for this way of life. You're scoring one for the home team and showing the world that American manufacturing and American industry is back. Now, I don't want to pretend like everything's solved. We've still got a long way to go. Not just in this industry, but in our economy, for all our friends, all our neighbors who are still feeling the sting of recession. There's nobody here who doesn't know someone who's looking for work and hasn't found something yet. Even though the economy is growing, even though it's created more than 2 million jobs over the past 15 months, we still face some tough times. We still face some challenges. You know, this economy took a big hit. You know, it's just like, you know, if you had a bad illness, if you got hit by a truck, you know, it's going to take a while for you to mend. And that's what's happened to our economy. It's taking a while to mend. And you know, there's still some headwinds that are coming at us. Lately, it's been high gas prices that have caused a lot of hardship for a lot of working families. And then you have the economic disruptions following the tragedy in Japan. You've got the instability in the Middle East, which makes folks uncertain. There are always going to be bumps on the road to recovery. We're going to pass through some rough terrain that even a Wrangler would have a hard time with. We know that. Say, Wrangler can go over anything, huh? But you know what? We know what's happened here. We know what's possible when we invest in what works. And just as we succeeded in retooling this industry for a new age, we've got to rebuild this whole economy for a new age so that the middle class doesn't just survive, but it also thrives. You know, these are tight fiscal times. You know, you guys have all heard about the deficit and the debt, and that demands that we spend wisely, cut everywhere that we can. We've got to live within our means. Everybody's got to do their part. Middle-class workers like you, though, shouldn't be bearing all the burden. You work too hard for someone to ask you to pay more so that somebody who's making millions or billions of dollars can pay less. That's not right. And even though we're in tough times, there's still some things that we've got to keep on doing if we're going to win the future. We can't just sit back and stop. We got business we got to do. We got to make sure that our schools are educating our kids so that they can succeed. Yeah, I was looking at all the gizmos and gadgets you've got in this plant here. It's a lot more complicated working on a plant than it used to be. Kids have to know math and science. We got to have a transportation and communications network that allows our businesses to compete. We used to have the best roads, the best bridges, the best airports. In a lot of places, we don't have that anymore. You go to China, Beijing, they've got a fancier airport. You know, you go to Europe, they got fancier trains, better roads. We can't let our infrastructure just crumble and fall apart. We're America. You know, we've got to make that investment. We've got to invest in innovation that will pave the way for future prosperity. We invented stuff that the world now uses and the world now makes. We've got to keep on inventing stuff and make sure it's made right here in America. And that requires investment. That requires investments in basic research and basic science. So these are all things that will help America out-innovate, out-educate, out-compete, out-hustle everybody else in the world. I want America to win the future. And I want our future to be big and optimistic, not small and fearful. So we've got a lot of hard work that's left to do, Ohio. We got a lot of work to do. But we're going to get there. And if anybody tells you otherwise, I want you to remember the improbable turnaround that's taken place here at Chrysler. I want you to remember all those folks all those voices who were saying no, we can't. Because Toledo, you showed that this was a good investment, betting on America's workers. What we see here is a proud reminder that in difficult times, Americans, they dig deep, they recapture the toughness that makes us who we are, builders and doers, who never stop imagining a better future. So what I see here is a reminder of the character that makes us great. That we're people who will forge a better future because that's what we do. What I see here is an America that is resilient, an America that understands that when we come together, nobody can stop us. So I tell you what, I'm going to keep on betting on you, and as long as I continue to have the privilege of being the President of the United States, I'm going to keep fighting alongside you for a future that is brighter for this community, for Toledo, for Ohio, for America. Thank you. God bless you. God bless the United States of America. Thank you. Let me just say, when you look at all these cars, it is testimony to the outstanding work that's been done by workers, American designers. The U.S. auto industry is back. The fact that GM is back #1, I think shows the kind of turnaround that's possible when it comes to American manufacturing. And it's good to remember that the fact that there were some folks who were willing to let this industry die because of folks coming together. We are now back in a place where we can compete with any car company in the world. And these are not only selling here in the United States, they also serve as a platform for us to sell product all around the world. So I'm just very proud of what we're seeing here. That Camaro with the American Eagle and the American flag, that helps tell the story.
It does indeed, Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate you.
Hey, thank you for everything you do. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. How's it going, UAW? It is good to be with some auto workers today. All right. Hey, everybody have a seat. Get comfortable. Go ahead and get comfortable. I'm going to talk for a little bit. First of all, I want to say thank you to one of the finest leaders that we have in labor, Bob King. Give it up for Bob. I want to thank the International Executive Board and all of you for having me here today. It is a great honor. I brought along somebody who is proving to be one of the finest secretaries of transportation in our history. Ray LaHood is in the house. Give Ray a big round of applause. It is always an honor to spend time with folks who represent the working men and women of America. It's unions like yours that fought for jobs and opportunity for generations of American workers. It's unions like yours that helped build the arsenal of democracy, that defeated fascism and won World War II. It's unions like yours that forged the American middle class, that great engine of prosperity, the greatest that the world has ever known. So you guys helped to write the American story. And today, you're busy writing a proud new chapter. You are reminding us that no matter how tough times get, Americans are tougher. No matter how many punches we take, we don't give up. We get up. We fight back. We move forward. We come out on the other side stronger than before. That's what you've shown us. You're showing us what's possible in America. So I'm here to tell you one thing today. You make me proud. You make me proud. Take a minute and think about what you and the workers and the families that you represent have fought through. So a few years ago, nearly 1 in 5 auto workers were handed a pink slip. 1 in 5. 400,000 jobs across this industry vanished the year before I took office. And then as the financial crisis hit with its full force, America faced a hard and once unimaginable reality that 2 of the big 3 automakers, GM and Chrysler, were on the brink of liquidation. The heartbeat of American manufacturing was flatlining, and we had to make a choice. With the economy in complete free fall, there were no private investors or companies out there willing to take a chance on the auto industry. Nobody was lining up to give you guys loans. Anyone in the financial sector can tell you that. So we could have kept giving billions of dollars of taxpayer dollars to automakers without demanding the real changes or accountability in return that were needed. That was one option. But that wouldn't have solved anything in the long term. Sooner or later, we would have run out of money. Could have just kicked the problem down the road. The other option was to do absolutely nothing and let these companies fail. And you will recall there were some politicians who said we should do that. Some even said we should let Detroit go bankrupt. You remember that? You know? Think about what that choice would have meant for this country if we had turned our backs on you. If America had thrown in the towel, if GM and Chrysler had gone under. The suppliers, the distributors that get their business from these companies, they would have died off. Then even Ford could have gone down as well. Production shut down. Factories shuttered. Once proud companies chopped up and sold off for scraps. And all of you, the men and women who built these companies with your own hands, would have been hung out to dry. More than 1 million Americans across the country would have lost their jobs in the middle of the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. In communities across the Midwest, it would have been another Great Depression. And then think about all the people who depend on you. Not just your families, but the school teachers, the small business owners, the server in the diner who knows your order, the bartender who's waiting for you to get off. That's right. Their livelihoods were at stake as well. And you know what was else at stake? How many of you who've worked the assembly line had a father or a grandfather or a mother who worked on that same line? How many of you have sons and daughters who said, you know, Mom, Dad, I'd like to work at the plant too? These jobs are worth more than just a paycheck. They're a source of pride. They're a ticket to a middle-class life. They make it possible for you to own a home and raise kids and maybe send them, yes, to college. Give you a chance to retire with some dignity and some respect. These companies are worth more than just the cars they build. They're a symbol of American innovation and know-how. They're the source of our manufacturing might. If that's not worth fighting for, what's worth fighting for? So no, we were not going to take a knee and do nothing. We were not going to give up on your jobs and your families and your communities. So in exchange for help, We demanded responsibility. We said to the auto industry, you're going to have to truly change, not just pretend like you're changing. And thanks to outstanding leadership like Bob King, we were able to get labor and management to settle their differences. We got the industry to retool and restructure, and everybody involved made sacrifices. Everybody had some skin in the game. And it wasn't popular. And it wasn't what I ran for president to do. That wasn't originally what I thought I was going to be doing as president. But you know what? I did run to make the tough calls and do the right things, no matter what the politics were. Yeah. And I want you to know, you know why I knew this rescue would succeed? You want to know? It wasn't because of anything the government did. It wasn't just because of anything management did. It was because I believed in you. I placed my bet on the American worker. And I'll make that bet any day of the week. And now, 3 years later, that bet is paying off. Not just paying off for you, it's paying off for America. 3 years later, the American auto industry is back. GM is back on top as the #1 automaker in the world. Highest profits in its 100-year history. Chrysler is growing faster in America than any other car company. Ford is investing billions in American plants, American factories, plans to bring thousands of jobs back to America. All told, the entire industry has added more than 200,000 new jobs over the past 2.5 years. 200,000 new jobs. And here's the best part. You're not just building cars again. You're building better cars. After 3 decades of inaction, we're gradually putting in place the toughest fuel economy standards in history for our cars and pickups. That means the cars you build will average nearly 55 miles per gallon by the middle of next decade, almost double what they get today. That means, folks, every time they fill up, they're going to be saving money. They'll have to fill up every 2 weeks instead of every week. That saves the typical family more than $8,000 at the pump over time. That means we'll cut our oil consumption by more than 2 million barrels a day. That means we have to import less oil while we're selling more cars all around the world. Thanks to the bipartisan trade agreement I signed into law, with you in mind, working with you, there will soon be new cars in the streets of South Korea imported from Detroit and from Toledo and from Chicago. And today, I talked about this at the State of the Union. We are doing it today. I am creating a trade enforcement unit that will bring the full resources of the federal government to bear on investigations, and we're going to counter any unfair trading practices around the world, including by countries like China. America has the best workers in the world. When the playing field is level, nobody will beat us, and we're going to make sure that playing field is level. Because America always wins when the playing field is level. And because everyone came together and worked together. The most high-tech, fuel-efficient, good-looking cars in the world are once again designed and engineered and forged and built, not in Europe, not in Asia, right here in the United States of America. I've seen them myself. I've seen them myself. I've seen it at Chrysler's Jefferson North plant in Detroit, where a new shift of more than 1,000 workers came on 2 years ago, another 1,000 slated to come on next year. I've seen it in my hometown at Ford Chicago Assembly, where workers are building a new Explorer and selling it to dozens of countries around the world. There you go. I've seen it at GM's Lordstown plant in Ohio, where workers got their jobs back to build the Chevy Cobalt. At GM's Hamtramck plant in Detroit, where I got to get inside a brand new Chevy Volt fresh off the line, even though Secret Service wouldn't let me drive it. But I like sitting in it. It was nice. I'll bet it drives real good. And 5 years from now, when I'm not president anymore, I'll buy one and drive it myself. Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Look, I know our bet was a good one because I had seen it pay off firsthand. But here's the thing. You don't have to take my word for it. Ask the Chrysler workers near Kokomo, who were brought on to make sure the newest high-tech transmissions and fuel-efficient engines are made in America. Or ask the GM workers in Spring Hill, Tennessee, whose jobs were saved from being sent abroad. Ask the Ford workers in Kansas City coming on to make the F-150 America's best-selling truck, a more fuel-efficient truck. And you ask all the suppliers who are expanding and hiring and the communities that rely on them if America's investment in you was a good bet. They'll tell you the right answer. And who knows, maybe the naysayers would finally come around and say that standing by America's workers was the right thing to do. Because I've got to admit, it's been funny to watch some of these folks completely try to rewrite history now that you're back on your feet. The same folks who said if we went forward with our plan to rescue Detroit, you can kiss the American automotive industry goodbye. Now they're saying we were right all along. Or you've got folks saying, well, the real problem is what we really disagreed with was the workers. They all made it out like bandits. The saving the auto industry was just about paying back the unions. Really? I mean, even by the standards of this town, that's a load of you-know-what. You know, about 700,000 retirees had to make sacrifices on their health care benefits that they had earned. A lot of you saw hours reduced or pay or wages scaled back. You gave up some of your rights as workers. Promises were made to you over the years that you gave up for the sake and survival of this industry, its workers, their families. You want to talk about sacrifice? You made sacrifices. This wasn't an easy thing to do. Let me me tell you, I keep on hearing these same folks talk about values all the time. You want to talk about values? Hard work, that's a value. Looking out for one another, that's a value. The idea that we're all in it together and I'm my brother's keeper and sister's keeper, that's a value. They're out there talking about you like you're some special interest that needs to be beaten down. Since when are hard-working men and women who are putting in a hard day's work every day, since when are they special interests? Since when is the idea that we look out for one another a bad thing? You know, I remember my old friend Ted Kennedy, he used to say, what is it about working men and women they find so offensive? You know, this notion that we should have let the auto industry die, that we should pursue anti-worker policies in the hopes that unions like yours will buckle and unravel, that's part of that same old you are on your own philosophy that says we should just leave everybody to fend for themselves. Let the most powerful do whatever they please. They think the best way to boost the economy is to roll back the reforms we put into place to prevent another crisis, to let Wall Street write the rules again. They think the best way to help families afford health care is to roll back the reforms we passed that's already lowering costs for millions of Americans. They want to go back to the days when insurance companies could deny your coverage or jack up your rates whenever and however they pleased. They think we should keep cutting taxes for those at the very top, for people like me. Even though we don't need it, just so they can keep paying lower tax rates than their secretaries. Well, let me tell you something. Not to put too fine a point on it, they're wrong. They are wrong. That's the philosophy that got us into this mess. We can't afford to go back to it, not now. We've got a lot of work to do. We've got a long way to go before everybody who wants a good job can get a good job. We've got a long way to go before middle-class Americans fully regain that sense of security that's been slipping away since long before this recession hit. But you know what? We've got something to show. All of you show what's possible when we pull together. Over the last 2 years, our businesses have added about 3.7 million new jobs. Manufacturing is coming back for the first time since the 1990s. Companies are bringing jobs back from overseas. The economy is getting stronger. The recovery is speeding up. Now is time to keep our foot on the gas, not put on the brakes. And I'm not going to settle for a country where just a few do really well and everybody else is struggling to get by. We're fighting for an economy where everybody gets a fair shot. Right. Where everybody does their fair share. Where everybody plays by the same set of rules. We're not going to go back to an economy that's all about outsourcing and bad debt and phony profits. We're fighting for an economy that's built to last. That's built on things like education and energy and manufacturing. Making things, not just buying things, making things that the rest of the world want to buy. And restoring the values that made this country great. Hard work and fair play. The chance to make it if you really try. The responsibility to reach back and help somebody else make it too, not just you. That's who we are. That's what we believe in. You know, I was telling you, I visited Chrysler's Jefferson North plant in Detroit about a year and a half ago. Now, the day I visited, some of the employees had won the lottery. Not kidding. They had won the lottery. Now you might think that after that they'd all be kicking back and retiring. And no one would fault them for that. You know, building cars is tough work. But that's not what they did. The guy who bought, funny you ask. The guy who bought the winning ticket, he was a proud UAW member who worked on the line. So he used some of his winnings to buy his wife the car that he built because he's really proud of his work. Then he bought brand new American flags for his hometown because he's proud of his country. And he and the other winners are still clocking in at that plant today because they're proud of the part they and their co-workers play in America's comeback. See, that's what America's about. You know, America's not just looking out for yourself. It's not just about greed. It's not just about you know, trying to climb to the very top and keep everybody else down. When our assembly lines grind to a halt, we work together, we get them going again. When somebody else falters, we try to give them a hand up because we know we're all in it together. Now, I got my start standing with working folks who'd lost their jobs, folks who had lost their hope because the steel plants had closed down. I didn't like the idea that they didn't have anybody fighting for them. The same reason I got into this business is the same reason I'm here today. I'm driven by that same belief that everybody should deserve a chance. So I promise you this, as long as you've got an ounce of fight left in you, I'll have a ton of fight left in me. We're going to keep on fighting to make our economy stronger, to put our friends and neighbors back to work faster, to give our children even more opportunity, to make sure that the United States of America remains the greatest nation on earth. Thank you, UAW. I love you. God bless you. God bless the work you do. God bless the United States of America.